been in financial services for some 25 years. I like to say, I had the opportunity to kind of learn a lot of what not to do, and had an opportunity to kind of restart my career and try and go back and not repeat the same mistakes. And I came right out of college. So at the age of like 22, 23, I went into business, and I realized in the beginning, I had to differentiate myself in an industry where I think still to this day, everybody sounds the same. And so just how to go about doing that. And I got brought in from some of the success that I had doing just the business in general, that I got brought in and started doing training sessions for advisors 2 or 3 years into the business, that kind of got humbled and came in and kind of wanted to hear best practices at the firm I was at, within the first 5 years probably of my career. I wrote my first book in 2012 called Your World Impact as a Financial Advisor. The premise of that book was just, again, do you understand who you are? Do you understand the value you have? And do you understand what the clients are needing, and how to make that, how, if you can make a difference in clients' lives, your impact in the world was the premise behind the book. Had been bugged many times to kind of give it a facelift, and we decided to take it in a different direction with the Total Relationship book, that it's basically where the Your World Impact as a Financial Advisor is completely for financial advisors. The Total Relationship book is both here to the financial advisor. This is the type of relationship that I think breeds the best practices. This is the type of conversation you should be having and seeking answers from the client. And it's for client realizing this is what your advisor should be doing for you. And asking you, and it's all about, it's not just the advisor-client relationship. It's the client's relationship to their money, to their fears, to their hopes, to their dreams, to the scarcity of wealth, to the benefit of taking it out of the accounts and enjoying it, and everything in between. And so we put that book together, and I appreciate you having on your podcast here to kind of talk a little bit about that, and about how we might make a difference in advisors' lives through marketing and through this collaboration we're going to have here for the next 20 or 30 minutes.
You bet. Let's start with early on. You said you learned a lot of what not to do, a lot of mistakes. What were some of the lessons you brought out from the early stages of your career?
Yeah, so to go back to the sob story, right? I grew up in a Midwest town that was the classic have-nots and haves, and I lied on my work application when I was like 12 or 13 to get the busboy job, because Dad left Mom with the 4 kids and an eviction notice, so I didn't come from money. And about the time I was 16, the high school started playing the stock market game. And of course, this is, you remember this. This was back when you like to look up a stock, you took out the paper. It's how it closed the day before, right? That's online stuff. And I had seen this symbol in the stock market game that had gone from 12 to 7, and I decided I wanted to buy some, and I wanted to take some of my summer wages and go and invest in this company. And I didn't know anything about the company other than it was on the most dropped list from whatever the week before was. And I decided I was going to try and play it for a bounce, what have you. And anyway, Mom said no. I was so mad that I had to get permission. It's like, what? This is my money. Like, it's in my account. Custodian account. Didn't know what that meant back then. Anyway, Mom said no. I dragged her in to see the broker that talked to the high school class. And the broker basically convinced my mother that, okay, how about we don't do stocks? How about we do mutuals? Here, put $50 a month in with dollar cost average. And then she took my mom through the time of that. Well, anyway, I was fast forward. By the time when I turned 18, boom, I went and bought my first 2 stocks and caught the last end of the tech bubble and ripped it up to $100,000, and then bought one company and then leveraged the one company and lost it all. Mm-hmm. Don't feed margin calls, right? That just cut your wounds and walk away. About the same time I was graduating college and in trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I ended up through divine intervention, really, making some interviews and getting in my foot in the door of a very old broker dealer firm, and was given my booth or my little bullpen. You swung the computer screen through, that was the green monitor. You could type in the symbols back in the day. But this is before even email, that they didn't have email in the systems back then. You called everybody. And so the 3,000 phone calls, and if you bought 300 shares Southern Company. It would pay the dividends, would pay your average electric bill, Mr. and Mrs. Client, and just tried to sell, and had been taken to the home office for a month. Literally, you checked into a hotel for a month. Every day you got quote unquote sales training, right? Create a problem or a fear and create a solution or a need and sell it. Get your foot in the door. Give me something. Let me get started. Fast forward, I realized that's not what I wanted. I was in a town where I had gone to college based on myself down in Pensacola, Florida, and just decided to let life start over, and to the detriment of the branch manager that hired me, who told me, "You're young and you're going to move." I'm like, "I'm not going to retire in your retirement, and I'm committed to being here." Well, 2 years later, he was right, and I moved back to my grandma's house because the little email had gone through. This was the dial-up love, you got mail at AOL stuff, and it was like the first family email that went out that someone needs to help move home, or grandma's got to leave the farm and go into a care facility because of her insulin and diabetes and so on and so forth. And to the shock of the family, like the prodigal son reached out and said, "Okay, I'll come home and live on the farm." And partly it was because no rent, right? And food, right? It's a farm. There's always food. Yeah. And all right. And then it's like, I don't have to sell. I can just do the right thing. And turned out the broker dealer had an office, and walked into that office and interviewed for a job they weren't offering. And the gentleman that was the branch manager of that office, I was probably 23, 24. He was 68. Classic stockbroker, started the business in his basement, rode the 80s and 90s, was awesome at picking them, horrible at selling them.
Yeah.
And we got together and just kind of did some of the I went in there and just tried to start my business, and one day got frustrated. Again, you didn't have to do a whole lot because you're living at home. And as far as worrying about making money, that is, or selling. But one day I was frustrated and went in and I said, "Hey, let me see your account after 40 years of doing this." And he kind of looked at me kind of funny. I'm like a little hesitant. And I'm like, wait, if you're not going to share your financial statements with me, I might as well quit. Like, what am I doing? This is crazy. If I can't get you to let me see it, if you don't trust me to see it, like, forget it. Well, he hands me his statements, and I'm looking at this 7-figure multi-million-dollar portfolio, because he had he had the 80s and 90s of stocks, and he had the 20-ish stocks at the end of that growth stock bubble of the late 90s, and it was just crushing it. And he was looking for me to go, "Oh my gosh, like, wow, way to go," or whatever. And I looked at it, and I looked up to him, and this is how I'm wired. I just said, "Why isn't this in a trust? You own this jointly with your wife." And he's kind of like, "What?" And I said, "Do you know what you'd pay in estate taxes if you two died? Like, holy, this is it's $1 million or more." Well, I didn't know about 2 weeks before I walked in that office, they had sent their first estate tax check to the federal government for just a few dollars over $1 million. It looked like it was $1 million check that they wrote. And I have a copy of that to this day, because it's like, holy cow, that's something to avoid. Anyway, he's like, "You know stuff about that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I'll figure it. Yeah, I'll give me access to your accounts, and I'll go do some software. I'll come back and show you what the calculations are, and so on and so forth." And he did that, and I called the home office because I actually didn't know a whole lot about estate tax. I knew how to identify a problem. I didn't have any clients or know how to fix it. I just knew how to identify those sales, right? They identify problems and then call the home office. So I called the home office and said, "Hey, I got a client," not really, because it's the advisor next door, but like, help me fix this, and then teach me how to do it. Like, what am I doing? Like, how does this work? And they gave me this. They gave me the plan. And I went back to him and I said, "Hey, this is what you got to do." He's like, "I've talked to my wife about trust, and I've talked to her about this. She doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to do this. She doesn't want to listen to me, nothing." And I said, "All right, bring her in and let me talk to her, because she doesn't want to listen to you. You've been married to her for 50 years, whatever it was." And so he reluctantly did it. And when they were coming in, I said, "You can't talk. You got to let me try. Because if you haven't gotten her anywhere, then let me take a crack at it." And so they sat down, and I looked at her wife, and I could tell her demeanor was not real pleased that she was there. And I said, "You guys have done so well that, you have an estate tax problem. And that means you're going to lose about 50 cents on every dollar," which was what the rate was back then. And she's kind of looked at and just kind of shook her head. She's like, I really don't care." And I said, "Okay, can I ask a question?" She's like, "What?" And I said, "How many places?" I said, "Do you have family china?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "Do you have how many place settings you got? You got 8 or 12? She's like, "Well, I have 12. I said, "Well, you're going to have 6 when the IRS takes half of them." And you got the 2 Toyotas, so the IRS will take one. You guys can pick which one. And I said, and then think like, your daughter's going to get your shoes. Well, she's just going to get the left shoe because the government's going to take the right shoe. And those were the 3 things I said. And she looked at him and said, "You better fix this." And she got up and walked out, and he looked at me kind of dumbfounded. And I said, "You have to relate it to what she wants to relate it to."
Oh yeah.
And that 25 years ago was, I didn't realize it at the time. For most clients, it has nothing to do with money or black ink and white paper, a statement. It has nothing to do, I mean, gosh, the industry is spending way too much money to produce pie charts that have all these colors and graphs, or your percentage of allocation and your Monte Carlo of projection. And at the end of the day, they're listening to all us tell us all this stuff that they're being polite. And what they really want to know is, okay, that's great. In 6 months, I want to spend $50,000 to have my 50th anniversary trip. Can I do that? Mm-hmm. And how do I pay for it? Right. And part of the total relationship book is realizing the role that most clients are hiring us for is to be in the permission business, to basically say, no, you shouldn't, or yes, you can. Mm-hmm. And so it's part of the, going back to the lessons learned of whether it wasn't cold calling, it was having conversations. Some of the lessons learned of, especially because the mentor that I had, that I worked with for 5 years, and then at 28, I think I was, he retired and I bought his practice. And from that day forward, I never had another client. I never needed to have another client for the rest of my life. But for those 5 years of realizing how hard it was to transact business on an individual position level, like we decide one day we're going to sell this stock, and are you going to sell it based on the client that has the most money in it? Are you going to sell it based on the alphabet of how it printed out? And then the markets were moving, so you start calling people, and you couldn't get out fast enough before the stock moved against you. Or whoever answered first got the best price, and whoever answered less, heaven forbid you wanted to think about it, right? And technology has just made that worse as things have moved forward. And so it taught me some things about how to manage the practice, how to talk to clients, and how to differentiate myself from how everyone's trained. And I think most financial advisors are still a classic stockbroker hiding behind a different title, wanting to do something different, feeling like there's got to be a better way to do this, feeling like they're presenting stuff and the client, they're there, but they're not engaged. Mm-hmm. And that's what and then trying to make it fun, right? And so that's why we wrote this book for the total relationship, to try and share it with other people. And part of that too is going back to what you're doing with the marketing, is it all ties together. Like, it's amazing. It's not rocket science, but it's also amazing how few people are doing it.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Let's pick up on that. That there was so much buried in there. One of the conversations, I've had this conversation 3 times today already, about all of the internal industry data shows vast majority of clients of financial advisors, I'm going to use the term 60%. I don't know if it's exactly right or not, but something like 60% of clients aren't really all that thrilled about their person, right? Yep. And one of the data points I saw was 65% weren't all that thrilled with whoever it was they were working with. 35% were thinking about moving at any one time. And the number one complaint was the communication that happens. And there's a difference between how men perceive financial advisors and women in the way that they describe communication. But it's right down the alley of what you're talking about here. If you start with the most mundane of marketing concerns, advisors who are frustrated they don't get enough referrals, let's say. Well, if I'm not only lukewarm on who my advisor is, but I can barely remember their name from a day-to-day basis, when the topic comes up over lunch with my friends at the club or my friends at work, that's the last thing that's going to happen is, oh, I've got somebody and you should go talk to them about X, Y, and Z. But I understand that's exactly where you're going here, is to really build that relationship, build all of the pieces of the relationship, do it in a holistic way. Expand on that. Where does an advisor start to go from, as you described, the stockbroker mentality to really having a holistic relationship with the client?
Yeah, so I read a book that started planting some of the seeds that I think are the four pillars that kind of break some of the molds that we're going to try and talk about breaking here in the industry. And the word is form. It's an acronym. We've twisted it a little bit from its original meaning. Duncan McPherson wrote the book as a coach and great business development consultant for the financial services industry in both Canada and the United States. Anyway, Form, which our business is named Form Wealth Advisors, the F in Form stands for family. And so every client meeting that we have, every prospective client meeting we have, we basically explain, in every meeting we're asking, what do you want to get out of this meeting and why are we sitting here today? Mm-hmm. Is there any time frame we're on, right? That's always a really good question to ask. Oh, yeah. And it's kind of like get an agenda, right? Not necessarily, and I'm not saying I think some advisors either don't have one or they have it and the client doesn't get to speak into it. And I'd rather just build it because you don't know what the client's coming in the door with or the perspective is. But when they tell me whatever that is, I said, great. I also want to, based on, whether we start, but somewhere in there, it's tell me about the family. Mm-hmm. Because if dad just broke his hip, right? If mom got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, like all this family stuff, if we're not taking the time to ask the person, whether it's an existing client or a new client, about who they love and outside, because I've had situations where just can the whole meeting, forget it. We're just going to talk about this. I remember a client came in, this is before I knew what I was doing. And we, at a point in our career, did a reset. And we basically sat every client down and said, hey, we want you to rehire us. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're going to go through a process and we want you to rehire us, or we want to also select out the clients that don't fit. Mm-hmm. And I said, so the F in Form stands for family. Tell me about your family. Let's start with your parents. His dad was in World War II. He lifted up his ring and he showed me his dad's Marine World War II D-Day. I was like, I almost canceled the rest of my afternoon. We sat and talked for 2 or 3 hours. It was the most enriching thing. And since then, on occasion, if he's bopped in or whatever else and has got that ring on, I'll point. I remind. It's like love the ring, right? Which I just said we had that time together where we deepened that relationship for hours, just sharing the amazing story of your dad's experience and how that's generation starting to get lost, but the difference that makes. The point is, all of us have people that we love or have people that have poured into our lives, and wealth comes down from them, right? And do we know who's in charge? How are they doing? And mom and dad have passed. Okay, how old were they? What? Oh, how old was mom? Well, mom was 92. Okay, well, I'm going to write down mom's 92. You're 62 and you're telling me you feel old. I'm like, we got 30 years of your mom's health, right? And because you probably had a better health system, you might live longer. But if you're 62 and mom died at 42, I ask the question, does that affect how long you think you're going to live? And it's usually one or the other. No, not at all. Or, you know what? Yeah, every day's a gift. And it's like, okay, well, for them, I may not do you're going to live to 100 Monte Carlo system, right? Because they're not wired that way. But the family and talking about the family can tell you so much. And then you also pass wealth down. So do we have kids or loved ones we want to leave this to, and where are they at in life? And so everything around the interaction with the client starts at the highest level of the F standing for family, both up the family tree and down the family tree. If I was going to write another book, it'd be wealth. Money does grow on trees. It's family trees in financial services.
Sure.
But the other part of that is, how are you, right? Because you're part of that family tree. How's your health? And we ask those questions. My back went out. I got surgery coming. So the F in Form stands for family. That's a pillar of a deepening relationship. And at the end of the day, that's where all the money comes from or goes. Form, the O stands for occupation. For people in retirement, that's the last occupation. You may have that occupation for the longest. Yeah. And helping make transitions through occupations, changing jobs, those are all financial events of financial planning. Helping someone realize that, I think it's 80% of people don't get to end their career the way they want, and helping people that either got laid off or downsized or else realize, wait a second, you don't need to make this, success is not having to go back and make this much. Success might just be, we just got to match that 401k for 3 more years. And how do we do that? But just understanding the journey, and for a lot of folks, some of the wealth was built through those occupations. So understanding the hard work and the sacrifice that went into these occupations, the educations behind them. So that's FOR for inform, stands for recreations. Those are the hobbies and the joys we have in life. That's also where you tend to spend some money on travel and different leisure activities. And ironically, about every 5 to 7 years, those change dramatically. Either you get bored doing it, you're not good at doing it, or it's like, going 3 times to the same place isn't fun anymore, or your health changes, or your physical physique changes that limits your ability to do some of these things. But and that's often where we get to speak in and advocate for enjoying life while you can, spending a little more on the front end, because in the long, there's a lull in financial before you get to the end of life where all of a sudden you're slowing down and yet you have some of the most money you've ever had. And so how do you balance that? But we advocate and just enjoy helping clients recreate and enjoy what they're doing. So that's the R. And then the M is the mission. And that's basically what's the impact you want to have in this world? What aspect do you want to do giving while you're living? I have a lot of clients that, come to me. It's like, I want to set up a donor advisor fund. It's like, okay, why don't we just give the money away? Like, are you trying to do tax planning and hoard wealth for yourself? Or are you really trying to make a difference in a charity? Because guess what? They probably could use it now. So understanding the form, family, occupation, recreation, mission, the client's life is taking, then helps us understand how to manage the wealth. And what I find in the relationship side is the more you can understand and ask open-ended questions and have conversation that deepen the relationship around family, occupation and work, your hobbies and your recreations, and this charity and mission and purpose behind life, the more all of a sudden the money just shows up.
Yeah.
And the more they let us have the trust and the respect and the relationship to, hey, let me manage this that you really want to deal with, but let's make sure we understand how you're doing in these areas of your life that you may need money for, or remind them, hey, you know what, because you said you wanted to leave this to the kids, or because you said you don't want to leave anything to the kids, or because you don't have kids, or we want to leave this to the charity, maybe we should trade off here. Or if your life goal and your bucket list that we track was you wanted to take this vacation, but now you're not feeling so well, it's like, all right, well, how about you upgrade, to first class seats and spend some money. Look, here's the profits in the account. Let's send some of that to the bank account. And I have a couple different huge stakes in the ground of what was success in this journey. One of them was a doctor, anesthesiologist, who worked until he was 72. He kept saying, you could retire at 65. And every year we met, you retired. You can retire. You're only working because you want to work. And at the end of the day, he was afraid, it's amazing. The more money people have, I find, the more afraid they're running out of money. It should be the reverse, right?
Yeah.
And he was afraid. And it wasn't until I showed him, it's like, this is exactly how we're going to set up a cash flow every month that goes into your bank account to replace the paycheck. Anyway, when he did retire, they wanted to go on a vacation. He's like, I really don't feel like I can afford it. I'm like, you have a multi-million-dollar portfolio. It went up a couple $100,000. And I looked at his wife and I said, I'm going to send to your bank account, because ACHs are set up. You can just do this. I'm sending 20 grand to your bank account. If you don't want to spend it on tickets, don't spend it on tickets. And this is years ago, but this is where I learned how to differentiate the psychology of what clients think is later bucket. That's for later. And what's the now bucket? People spend money that goes in their bank account, right? People spend their paycheck or the money that comes in that feels like the extra. And what I realized was I wasn't getting clear to them, talking in the intangibleness of the numbers. And yeah, you have it. It wasn't until I put 20 grand in their bank account and said that's profits that then it became a reality that so 2 weeks later, he calls me and says, I found out there's something called business class. So I bought that, because he thought, I'm saving money, right? And I spent $500 less on each ticket than what I would have spent otherwise. When they came back from their trip from Europe, he didn't talk at all about Europe. He had been there. Nothing. It was, oh my gosh, the silverware's real. They give you this hot towel and it smells like lemons, right? And my seat laid back, drinks, movies, my own person, my own bathroom. They gave me a toothbrush. I slept well. I wasn't tired when I got there. I wasn't tired when I got back. It was like his whole experience changed because I took a de minimis amount of his wealth and just said, here you go. So the opportunity, and what's all in this book is just the opportunity to realize, hey, stop talking about the mid-cap allocation.
Yeah.
Right? Stop talking about this manager's not 5-star, now they're 4 stars, and so we're going to go over here, or this tax deferral, or that, or whatever, because it's like the surgeon doesn't tell me what scalpel they're going to use, right?
Yeah.
Just fix it. Can I live with? How can I go on? And so as I see other professions have really good experts, and so I'm a certified financial planning practitioner. I have a certification in business exit planning. I have my certified investment manager analyst SEMA. Like, I'm all for, yes, you have to be the expert, but the smartest person in the room knows how to communicate with the dumbest person in the room and make that person feel smart.
You bet. You bet.
Too many things in our industry are trying to teach advisors to try and be the smartest guy in the room by making their clients feel dumb. Or talk about stuff that has nothing to do with really what they're talking about. Because I have found, this is all in the book, that this total relationship is not a financial plan that's 300 pages and it's 30 years into the future. Our financial planning is, what are you doing in the next 6 to 12 months that you know you're doing?
Yeah.
And where's the money coming from? Or are you going to call me in 6 months and you're freaked out because the bank balance dropped because you spent the money because you're doing it anyway, and now the market went down and your anxiety went up because the bank balance is down, and now we're all freaking out or complaining or sending emails of concerns that can cause all kinds of issues, versus, hey, what are you doing in the next 6 months, and coming up with the solutions of how to fund that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, good.
No, it's just I'm a little passionate about it because it's everywhere.
It's great. It's great. It's absolutely great. Yeah, yeah.
And I just find that everybody's putting their value on the portfolio, or as I said recently, it's about people, not about pie charts.
Oh yeah.
And and then it's, how do you live that out, and then also how do you market that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and it's so important. If the more you're asking sincere, interested questions, and again, go back to your formula here: family, occupation, recreation, mission. Most advisors don't get into any of that, right? They're how much do you have? How much can you put in? Where do we want to be in 20 years? And it's just so boring and so really just not building the relationship with the person. Let's go back to, in a practical term, how do you maintain and build that relationship with your existing clientele on a regular basis? What's your communication methodology? How do you really build the relationship to begin with, but maintain it on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, so that total relationship, there's 3 components to it that we're applying to the client.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is what we call the life plan. It's a total relationship plan. And it's, again, not necessarily the financial planning that's these Monte Carlos and projections and numbers. It's literally, we built the technology. It's literally the update on the family and how are the kids and where's mom and dad, and then how's your health, right? Those key issues first. Then let's talk about the house. How's the house? Right? Are you going to retire in the house, or are you going to sell the house and do something different? What are the home improvements you're looking to do in the future? Yeah. What are the home improvements that what are we worried about? Oh, the roof, the window. Like, these are all big ticket items that I found clients call me in 25 years out of the blue, and they need 20, 30, 40, 50 grand because something happened. And most of the time they weren't surprised when it happened. And so, what is that? Are we doing any home improvements this year? It's my favorite question. And yes, what is it? And then I watch them squabble over the bathroom or the stairwell. And then Can they do both, right? And the psychology of one spouse wanting to do a home improvement and turn wealth into something they tangibly can enjoy. Yeah. And then are belittled or shamed by the other spouse, like they're so you're spendthrift, right? They don't say it, but that's what the emotional communication is. And at the same time, I've realized in a psychology book that it's the exact same selfishness that's causing you to be a Meisner that wants to make it conservative and hold it. It's like, both are wrong. How do we do this and not have regret? That's our favorite saying. I want to make decisions that in the future we can look back and not regret the decisions we're making. So can we do both? Can we save enough, and can we spend some here? Do you want to take it from your portfolio? Do you want me to send you cash flow? Mr. Conservative one, that you can feel like you're saving it up in the bank account, and then when you got that 20 grand because you saved it, then you can spend it? Like, the psychology of all this is very important. Again, nothing to do with a portfolio.
Sure.
So the plan is all short term. What are you doing in the immediate and the now and the future? And then the review is, did you do it? Yes, no. I've had clients, it's like 3, 4, 5 years before they finally pulled the trigger on something for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Plan. Total relationship is 3 things. It's a plan. Then it's total relationship when it comes to wealth. That, for clients, has nothing to do with mid caps and small caps and large caps. It has to do with what's in the bank.
Oh, yeah.
How much do you need to have in there to sleep at night? How much do you need in there that there's a level of comfort that your emotions don't kick in to start making stupid decisions? And are we there's some people that felt really comfortable with 50 grand, and then it's 70, and then it's 100, and then it's 200, and then it's 500. It's all sitting in cash. My line there is that the bank's if the bank is remodeling their building faster than you're remodeling your house, you're probably leaving too much money in the bank.
Yeah.
But it's monitoring that cash balance. What do we want to keep in there? What do we want to have for reserves? And then trying to simplify. We don't send clients RMDs. We don't send clients dividends. We don't send clients random checks. We try and find out, especially if we catch them in retirement, which is where we niche our practice, is if you had 2 paychecks coming in at $5,000 each, can we just send you $10,000 a month? On what day of the month do you want it? And we create an account that all that money comes into and then goes to them. So there's one account that sends all money in and out. It's linked to the bank account. It's sanctified separately from the $1 million account. So if you get hacked, they're only hacking that one.
Right.
And it gives one place for us to go back and look at the history of the in and outs. And it gives them one place for them to see an account that doesn't fluctuate, because we're going to agree, here's all the money for the next year that you said you're going to need, and it's right here. So markets fluctuate, which they do. We don't have to be worried for the next year because everything you said you need is right here. And if the markets do go up and down, by all means call. But what I found is they all know you don't get to complain until we get to the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Well, time is a funny bugger because it fixes a lot of things over time.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, so that's how we're managing the portfolio. And the whole point of doing planning about what they're doing in the next 12 to 24 months is to identify, do I need to be raising something into the future? Making sure they have the cash balances, and then managing the wealth in such a way that we've done discretionary portfolio management since 2005, 6, where our systems are set up that we can go in and every client, whether they have 10 million with us or 10 grand with us, can have their portfolio's cash flow needs raised all at the same time, all at the same price, and then sanctified back into that bank account, earning some interest where they can see us. Oh, the market's up, and oh, they just raised money, right? And that was, they know, was for the next year. So you're solving the problems before they show up. The third part of the total relationship is caring enough to monitor that. Mm-hmm. It's caring enough to ask the questions. It's caring enough to find out that when they retire, they get a retirement clock, and it's a celebration, right? When they have that grandchild or child, they get a little frame with the kid's name on it because they'll put the picture in it. If they get the second home, they get a doormat with their name on, or the letter on it. Like, we're anchoring and doing wow opportunities to basically say to the clients, hey, we're paying attention to you.
Yeah.
And so, and we spend most of our marketing dollars back on our clients, because it's not so much, I'm fine, right, helping new clients, but what I want is I want my clients, I want the financial services shelf space in my client's head to be constantly hit by Form Wealth advisors that we're here, we're paying attention, we're making a difference, how are you doing? And then in caring, we have a service system where, depending on the state of their life, because people go in and out of service needs depending on health events, retirement events, so on and so forth, that by industry standard and by best practices, there's an absolute sit down once a year. We're going to pretend like we don't know you, so I'm going to ask you some of the same questions because they may change. And depending on the wealth and the need, we'll have a follow-up call 6 months from now. In the absolute worst case, the twice a year, that's kind of a check-in. Most clients have it every 3 to 4 months if we haven't heard from them checking in. And then we're doing our marketing stuff and our touches and the social media all around that to keep. I do a monthly up and down video. I called it up and down because I found every client opens up their statement or logs in and asks themselves the question, did it go up or down since the last time I looked? And I just decided, hey, I'll answer it before you get your statement.
Sure.
any application so they can experience us without having to necessarily contact us. But it's also a way to just to kind of keep that relationship alive, giving them something to be thinking about, especially in this world of chaos. It's like, here's a little bit of perspective, which I think is needed. But again, it's all relational based about, and not this more money, better return, hot idea mentality that our industry is.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's great. You know, there's a great book. I don't know if you've read it, called Giftology. That's all about the types of things that you're talking about of
Yep.
the the grandchild, the child, the floor mats, everything else. And it you said something in there. I want to pull out is you want to be in their mind and own that space of the financial planning, of the financial wealth in their life at all times.
Yep.
It's that constant drip of both gifting and communication, and as you said, the up and down thing, addressing, the elephant in the room, ahead of time, and being having their awareness constantly is the thing that gives you that ownership.
Yeah, and giving it scale in the sense that where I think too many financial advisors are thinking that the way they can make a difference in clients' accounts is to customize how the portfolio is managed. And it's just like, you can't do that for 500 people because you can't monitor all of that and their needs. And what we found is I'd rather customize what you need in cash. I'd rather customize what you need outside of the portfolios. I'd rather customize what your plan is. But after that, all we're trying to do is identify what do you need now and in the short term. So if this is all the long-term money, I can then manage all the long-term money the exact same, whether you're 20 or 80, because if it's long-term, it's long-term. So that then comes principles of finance, capital market assumptions, future rates of return, past trends, and the asset allocation and all the principles that go into that, which no one cares about as a client. That's why they're hiring. I mean, people care about this these days.
They go
themselves. Right? Or they'll drive you nuts. Either one. Anyway, the idea of being able to then not have to deal with 3 or 4 custom portfolios, but deal with models and deal with standardized questions they ask clients, and their answers can be customized.
Yeah.
And how we react to them can be customized. But yeah, and owning that shelf space is so important, and being in front of them and sponsoring different things in the community. And what we find when a client walks in the door and we ask, why are you here? A new client, they're like, well, I saw you at the golf event, and then my friend said something because they're a client of yours, and then you did that ad that you put in the paper, and then we got invited to this event, and it's like 4 or 5, 6 things over the course of a year or two, and then they have some event, retirement, inheritance, death, fear, markets, their advisor hasn't talked to them, or their advisor does another really nice 500-page pie chart example of the portfolio and a deep dive analysis that drove them absolutely bonkers. And they walk in the door, and we get to try and have a different conversation and build a relationship that most people aren't willing to do because they think they should be doing this other stuff. I think we're all wired relationally. I think, genuinely speaking, most financial advisors would prefer what I'm talking about than the compliance nightmare of a 12-page report of disclosures before you can get to the page that even has anything to do with what the client wants to even talk about, much less try to understand.
Yeah, it's all about relationship, and people miss that. And again, you went through all the certifications and different things you've done, but I say it slightly differently. Is that's just the foundational thing. If somebody's going to work with you, they expect you to be competent, but what really it makes the difference is building the relationship, the sincerity, and you being a real human being for them, back and forth. I have the facade of Wall Street on my wall back here, but the reason I put that up there is one of my favorite terms on the marketing side is Parthenon. Always have 15, 20, 25 different things going on with my own businesses, which I started about right out of college as well. But I always wanted the answer to be when I asked them, how did you find out about us? I wanted the answer to be, oh my God, how didn't I find out about you? I saw you here, I saw you here, I saw you here, I saw you here. And it's that synergy of the outreach in the community, the relationships, the visibility of the constant drip that eventually leads them to come to you. And your example is again a great example of they've been thinking about it for 6 months. They've been thinking about it for 9 months. They've been thinking about it for 3 months. They've been thinking about it for 2 years. And what I see, again, go back to that stockbroker mentality, to use your terminology, is I see so many advisors give up on people in 2 days, a week, 2 weeks. They have a very short window. They're either
Yep.
ready, they're either going to work with me or they're not. No, you're gonna drip on them, educate them, grow on them. They're going to learn about you, learn about the sincerity, learn about the lack thereof, whatever it might be, and then make a decision. And again, your example was great of, their advisor pissed them off with too many pie charts, and they finally came to you. We part of that reason, we talked about it briefly earlier. I think part of the reason why most people aren't all that thrilled about their advisor is they're not seeing them paying attention to their best interest, and they're not talking to them about what's really going on in their life. They're talking to them about an abstract market allocation, all of that they don't really have much interest in.
Well, and this just happened this afternoon. So this is like, I'm having this insight, like where you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And I'm like discerning what you're saying. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I never thought about this. This isn't in the book, but this is a reality. I think too many financial advisors are still trying to sell the client on consolidating the rest of their assets, right? I think here's how my portfolio is doing. Now let's look at the other portfolios and have this conflict. And the reason I bring this up is we have about a $5 million prospect coming in. Everything has been good. Everything's fine. He came back and he just said, I'm willing to move the qualified accounts, which is about $2 million. And he's going to leave the $3 million where it's at with the current advisor. And the consultant on the account came up to me, because they'll bring this to me and basically say, what do you want to do with it? And depending on how I feel, I'll just remind them it's all or nothing. Mm-hmm. We're going to take on everything and be responsible for how you're going to pay the bill you have, or the vacation you have, or the car you have. Or we're going to be the one person that knows all of your financial situations. So when you drop dead, your wife is not dealing with multiple people that are all conflicted. And what we found is our practice will be huge if we would have accepted every nickel and dime, and yet we'd be still working with all of the other stuff that the clients have outside of you, trying to be in the convincing business. We're not in the convincing business. Hire us to be your sole financial advisor, or don't hire me. I'm fine with that. I got so many people that want to become clients. It's okay. It's better for you. And I'm conflicted because guess what? My $5 million fee is cheaper than my $2 million fee. And so I don't want to see you be charged more because you're dividing yourself up. And so if it's not us, great, find someone. But if you want to fire your advisor, fire him. If not,
yeah.
And that's the 50 response rate, which is fine. But we've passed on millions of dollars, but then I don't have to have follow-up of, can you get me the statement, or can I look at that other account, or are you concentrated over there? Because that's all focused on stuff they don't want to deal with. And yes, we got to do the follow-up and the dripping and all this other stuff, but know what your boundaries are, how you want to do things. Because what we've found is that you convince the clients once to become a client. Once the money's here, now you're going to love on them and serve them and deepen that relationship, and you're never having to sell again because it's all here. It's like, sell what?
Yeah. Well, that's so important. And you know what I think it is if you're operating from an abundance mentality, and you have enough flow of people coming in, you don't feel like you have to have every client, every transaction, every sale, and then everything goes through the roof. So just being willing to make that statement is, have him.
My initial response was not feeling bad for the team. I felt bad for him. I'm like, he didn't get it.
Yeah. But having the fortitude, the confidence to say,
no, the abundance. You hit it on the abundance mindset. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And I said it to myself differently. When I was younger, as I said, the reason I want to be good at marketing is so I can pick and choose who I want to work with. Right. I don't have to deal with people who aren't a good fit for me. But said the different way, or your role is to handle everything for them on their financial side, not to be one of many. And if you don't have the confidence to tell people that and turn it down, if they don't want to play your game, you're not going to end up in the role you want to be with them.
Yeah. And it just that's where relationships are mutual. Who wants to be in a relationship where the other person doesn't want to be in the relationship?
Yeah.
That's exhausting, right? So it's just like, no, there's got to be a mutual fit, and we need to You need to freely give us trust, and then we have to work to earn it for the rest of our careers.
Yeah.
And by putting the focus on the person and putting the focus on having a relationship and best practices around planning and wealth management and caring for people. And it's just, it takes all of the stress and anxiety and frustration out of the things we don't control, which is all the markets and investments and we don't have to get caught up in the better than. My portfolio did better than yours, or your portfolio did better than mine. It's just like, guess what? If we get average over the next 10 years, it's going to average itself out unless one's taking more risk or one's not. They're not actual apple comparisons.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, none of that matters. What matters is, when do they need the money, or should they have not put it in there in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Tyson, I want to be respectful of your time, and I think we've already gone over our limit. We could do this for another 8 or 10 hours. I've just really,
well, it's fun, right?
It's a lot of fun. I will remind everybody, your book is The Total Relationship, totalrelationship.com / well, what's it going to be? AWM, I believe.
Yes.
And you have some free gifts for people there, and a digital copy of the book and one thing or another. So I highly recommend it. Hey, what haven't we touched on that you'd like to get across? I want to make sure we don't miss anything here.
Yeah, so we love to try and, iron sharpens iron, and so if any one of the listeners here wants to have a conversation about how they're marketing or how to implement some of this in best practices, the best way to reach out to us is on just LinkedIn, and we're trying to build a community of this total relationship advisors, trying to build a community of like advisors that want to try and again make an impact in this industry that just seems to be lacking this type of conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And the evolving landscape is also, as you said, I mean, if they want to do it themselves, it's easy. People who don't really care about you, I mean, and if you look at the technology evolution, AI and so forth, well, AI is going to kill off the people who don't care about the relationship. It's going to kill off the people who aren't focused on really the holistic approach. And it's certainly going to kill off people who take a portion of somebody's, management rather than really taking the whole thing and really caring about it.
Yep. Yeah. And the advisor that's going to lose to AI is the advisor that didn't figure out how to use AI.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, hey, it's been great. We'll call
Pleasure.
it, and we need to do this again sometime soon.
Awesome. Let's set it up.